Okay guys, sorry for the lighting. Hopefully the sound is okay. We're going to fill in our fermentation notes. Fermentation is the process that happens after glycolysis if there is no oxygen present. If there is oxygen, then cellular respiration goes on as normal. It goes from glycolysis, then into the Krebs cycle, then into oxidative phosphorylation. But if for some reason there's no oxygen available, then what happens is that pyruvate molecule that is created at the end of glycolysis will undergo fermentation. So let's take a look at what happens in this process. Now there's two types of fermentation we're going to see here. We're going to see fermentation called lactic acid fermentation, and we're also going to see alcoholic fermentation, which is when we think of baking and like winemaking. Those are alcoholic fermentation when there's the presence of yeast. Okay, so those are the two types of fermentation that organisms use when there isn't enough oxygen. So if there's not enough oxygen and there's yeast present, then it undergoes alcoholic fermentation. And if it's in mammals, in the mammal cells, like our muscle cells, for instance, we undergo lactic acid fermentation. Okay, so when yeast cells run low on oxygen, ethanol and carbon dioxide are made during fermentation in yeast cells. NADH, remember that's one of the high electron energy carriers or high energy electron carriers, is oxidized to form NAD+. That means it lost an electron. Bread rises when yeast inside the bread produces carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide gas is a byproduct or a product that comes out of the alcoholic fermentation. So look up here. This molecule right here is pyruvate. That's at the end of glycolysis. We have those pyruvate molecules. But now, because there's no oxygen present, then instead of undergoing Krebs cycle, it goes through this process of fermentation. So write pyruvate here. That's an E. Over here, this is our NADH being oxidized to NAD+. That's a plus. And over here, you should recognize this one. This is carbon dioxide, CO2. So that's released. And we have a new molecule formed here. And this is our ethanol molecule. That's the alcohol that is produced in alcoholic fermentation. Okay, down here, so when our cells are running low on oxygen or there's no oxygen at all, glycolysis can be performed without that oxygen. So that's why glucose can be broken down into the pyruvate, but then after that, it can't undergo the Krebs cycle without oxygen. So cells need the NAD+ so that they can continue to perform glycolysis. Without oxygen, cells need a way to oxidize. That means make it lose the electron. Oxidize the NADH to form the NAD+. So this is why fermentation takes place. And it happens, this is before it goes into the mitochondria. So where glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm, fermentation also happens in the cytoplasm. Oops. Okay. So up here again, this is the other kind of fermentation. So this is the pyruvate from glycolysis. This is our NADH going to NAD+. And this molecule here is not ethanol, this is lactic acid. And this is what happens in our muscles when we are running or working out. So when human cells, like muscles, run low on oxygen, lactic acid is made during fermentation in those human muscle cells. NADH is oxidized to form NAD+. Remember, oxidized means to lose an electron. Okay, the electron is attached to this hydrogen molecule. So when it loses that electron, it becomes oxidized, NAD+. Those electrons are still going to be used to continue on the cycle for the cell energy. Lactic acid can build up in our muscles and cause soreness. I'm sure you've all felt that at some point or another. Lactic acid is transported by the bloodstream to the liver and can then be converted into glucose. Okay, so that is your fermentation. So remind yourself that after glycolysis, the cell normally goes through Krebs cycle and then into oxidative phosphorylation. But if for some reason it's lacking oxygen, it will undergo lactic acid fermentation. So think no oxygen, we end up going into lactic acid fermentation. In baking, where there's yeast present, it doesn't go lactic acid fermentation, it does the alcoholic fermentation. So that's what we just looked at today. The other part of your homework for today is for you guys to finish the oxidative phosphorylation packet that we started in class yesterday if you didn't get it all completed. I will see you Wednesday. Have a great day.